Hello. Thank you for the magic. And thank you, Debbie Dean, for the introduction. And Diane, we all know Diane Haynes transforms people from I don't want to talk about myself to standing in this room and sharing their stories. And Dick Martin, the man with the camera, we also know Dick does so much more. And Mary, here for us, saving us. And the red lines are gone. Good job. Good job. Can you drop the lights full down? Pure darkness. A little mood lighting. Yes. so so hello all of you. I am glad you are here. Remember last year we met like this, and afterwards a few folks asked if I would talk with you again. But what's left to say? I had spilled all the beans, yet I really did want to talk with you some more. So I figured maybe I could share some of my many character flaws in the form of confessions. Okay, now we need a clicker. Yeah, I think you need to click on the screen once or something. Yeah, magic again. Thank you. So, just a few confessions from this ordinary life, all in the form of episodes, such as an experience with the green flash and one about narrowing the political divide. And this one is a confession made to me by a convicted criminal. And finally, is there any way to move the captions as maybe lower left? Lower left is great. And I don't know if there's any way to make it smaller, but whatever. We are good to go. So the point is that all these are experiences that helped me change and move forward. Also, last year, people asked if I could show more of the photographs I had taken. So, okay, we'll have, whoop, clicker. Clicker is not working. Yeah. Hey, good. We've got it all now, right? Yep, it's good. So 5 interludes, just a few photos tucked between each episode. Sound okay? All right. All right, let's go. So we're on interludes. Let's look at a few pictures of the sun. How does that song go? That lazy old sun got nothing to do but roll around heaven all day. Such as, here we have sun full of fire and dog full of joy. This soggy doggy reveled in romping back and forth and splashing up a storm. And here we have the rising sun reflected in a bubble. What looks like a big bubble is really a ½ inch wide. All the while, the sun, that tiny point of light, is out there in space, 93 million miles away. And here we have one December, the beachgoers built this cairn to honor the sun. This is rocks, balance. This thing is way taller than me. And I showed up one morning to find the cairn high-fiving the surf. And maybe because the sun constantly pours out its light, filling our glasses and making sunshine daiquiris for us all. In this topsy-turvy world, the sun is a constant, which is why I put the sun on a pedestal for all the good it gives. So that's about the sun. And the first episode is about how a tiny piece of green light sent me to the sea. The confession is that sometimes I can't let things go. Nothing unusual, we all do this. We have that soft spot for something, or we really want something to happen and we can't let it go. It's like that, except this one lasted 6 decades. And it's about the green flash. Has anyone here seen this bit of atmospheric phenomenon? The green flash? Oh, yay, a couple. But you see, not many. And that's because the green flash is practically nothing. It's a subtle pulse of green light. It happens when the sun goes down, 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 and just before the sun totally disappears behind the horizon, there comes, on rare occasions, a tiny flash of green light. It's small, it's rare. It only lasts a second or two, yet I spent most of my life chasing this. And my search began with this guy. My dad, we established last year, he's a fisherman, and he taught his kids to fish. Okay, there they are. But my two siblings on either side of me were way better than I ever was at fishing. And that's because I was easily distracted. Such as here, we're fishing, and you can see my sis and bro, they're happy as clams. And I'm in the middle just putting up with the whole scene because I was far more interested in yanking up those lily pads and examining the root systems. And my dad, I'd lean out to get a good one, and my dad, all afternoon, he'd be hollering at me, Janie, get yourself back in the boat before you capsize us all and lose the fishing rods. And this confused me, because how can anyone care more about fishing rods than root systems? Nevertheless, and quite reluctantly, I did learn to fish. Here we are, a generation later, teaching my daughter to do the same. That's little Sarah there. And gosh, I am so not proud of how I gaffed that poor grouper right in the stomach. But the point is, the best part of fishing for me was afterwards. Back at the docks, I'd wander off on my own and talk to old fishermen. The year is 1952. I'm this age where I'm told I often spent time in these long trances trying to figure things out. And back in those little kid days, I'd wander those docks and I'd watch the fishermen clean their catch. It was kind of like this, except this, again, is a generation later. That's my Sarah watching my dad clean who knows what. So I'd walk around and I'd talk to these guys and ask them questions. And one day, an old fisherman told me about the green flash. They said it looks like a chunk of emerald. And with binoculars, on rare occasions, you can see on the top rim of the sun a thin green line. Now, years later, I learned how this happens. As the sun is disappearing, the atmosphere, bends the light rays into different wavelengths, different colors. It's good old refraction. And on these occasions when the sun is about to disappear, there comes into view a tiny chunk of that refracted green light. So for decades, I searched for the real thing, and I came up with bupkis until this night. In 2017, I had retired by then. That year, both my husband and my dad, who lived with us, they both died. And I was like sad, pathetic, inconsolable. And I just took off and headed south and rented a funky little house in Key West for this season. So that even though I couldn't bring back my guys, at least I could search for the green flash every night of the week. So on this night, I asked my cousin to come along. Mary, could those captions be moved to the left? Yeah, thanks a bunch. So, okay, and once again, it needs to click to make the clicker work. Yeah, perfect. Okay, this is Cousin Ann. She loves animals, and they love her back, like the day this chicken flew in the restaurant and hung out on her head. So Ann lives in Key West. So when I asked her if she'd like to come with me to Mallory Square for sunset, she groaned because she knows Mallory Square is chaos. People watching sunset, people capturing sunset, and everybody loves each other. Except for maybe these two, they look like they've about had it with each other. But on this night, as the sun's going down, 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 we say to each other, do not take our eyes from the horizon. Do not blink. Sun goes down, and don't you know, after 64 years of searching, there it was, looking just like this, but I didn't take this picture because I was so happy. I just grabbed my cousin's hand, and we danced all over Mallory Square. We whirled and twirled, and guess what? Nobody noticed because we were in Key West, where everybody dances a time or two. So final word on the subject. There are green flash chasers. They go to great lengths to capture the green flash. As much as I enjoy photographing atmospheric phenomenon, for the green flash I never tried because it seems the green flash is something to enjoy, not to save on film. I mean, you know, when you see it, it's as much a feeling as it is a thing, as they say. Talking about music is like dancing about architecture. And in the same way, you can't capture a green flash. It's an experience. So that's about the green flash. And now an interlude for me too here. The next interlude is about the sea, such as here, beside the sea, under a red sky, a child's sandcastle from yesterday eroded to a small volcano in the morning. And here, bubbles on the sea, backlit by the sun. The sea washes those bubbles up onto the shore, and you can see each bubble is its own world, right? Its own universe. And at the time, I was studying the latest cosmology theories on multiple universes. So this seemed like a decent metaphor, right? Each bubble, its own universe. So here we have multiple universes, all within the stony well of a shell. And finally, a swirling vortex. Just can you imagine the wind patterns needed to make this happen? So the next episode is about, dare I say, politics. The confession is that I have been at times a single issue voter in the sense that it's a narrow view. Everything was black or white. This is good, that's bad. And we know that isn't good. That creates the political divide. And, you know, remember when our two political parties merely disagreed with each other? Now it seems they really don't like each other. And I wish we could narrow this divide. We do pretty well here at OCAMIC. We have forums, civil discourses, where people with different views listen to each other. But we know this is not the norm. So this is the story of how two hawks united a neighborhood divided by politics. The year is 2020. The town is St. Augustine, where I lived. The scene is politics. Neighborhood yards are boasting political signs, and people talk less and less with those whose signs differ from their own. Meet a couple people from my own little neighborhood. This is Charlie and Carol, strong liberals. She works, it can't be on the lower right. Yeah, I don't know, maybe that's deciding on its own, but anyway, there we go. So thank you, Mary. So yeah, Carol, she works at the Y with kids, and he's a photographer. And just a few houses down is Lori, a strong conservative. And she's an artist and an upland bird hunter. And part of her art is photography. So, typical neighborhood, right? Until one day, our little world is invaded by a hawk. Our protagonist, with strong wings and a curved beak, he swoops into the hood and lands in the tree across from my house. And he has a lady friend. And together, those two hawks build their home, a wide, cozy bowl of a nest. And don't you know, not long after that, up pops the fuzzy head of a little chick, and 2 days later, another one. There's another one right down in there. So the question is, who is taking these pictures? Are you thinking it's me? Would that it were true? Not me. Guess who? Charlie the liberal and Lori the conservative. Before this, those two figured they had nothing in common. But now they're both taken by this growing family of hawks. All they care about is capturing the beauty, such as here. Papa comes in for a landing. See the two chicks? And here, Mama with who knows what in her beak. And it looks like the chicks are wondering too. And oh, here. So such emotion here, right? You've got the nurturing parent, the spellbound chicks, and the little Anole, helpless, tailless, and probably totally freaked out. So in time, of course, the chicks grow. These are the chicks. They grew, and they often stare at each other as if wondering, hey, do I look like you? And then one day the big one turns to the other as if to say, what do you say? Let's blow this pop stand. So for the next couple days, they stand at the edge of the nest, flapping wings, practicing for flight. And check out the leggings on this one, right? So one morning, the big one flies the coop. And in erratic flight, he searches for a place to land. All the while, the neighbors watch on, beside themselves with delight. They're friends now, forgetting their differences in political signs. They are bonding over this family of hawks. So while we all watch, the young hawk finally lands. But it's the only metal roof in the whole neighborhood. Look at Mama circling above. And that roof is slippery, and that hawk loses footing. And he slides down the hot metal, and he keels over the edge and lands on the air conditioner of the house next door, which is my house. 2 days later, the second one launches. And together, those two hawks take up residence in my backyard, learning hawk things and resting sometimes, and every day growing bolder. So in some summary, here we are, a neighborhood with common interest, united by the wonder of nature. And these two deserve special credit. Credit for the hawk photos go to Lori Back and Charles Wesley. So that's about the hawks. And the next interlude is about the sky. And we're talking the night sky, such as here, my friends observing constellation Orion. And for this shot, I lay on my back in the dirt just behind their feet, because Orion was at its zenith, the highest point in the sky. You can see the great hunter there with his triple star-studded belt and his sword. And here, we see planet Jupiter hanging off the north horn of the crescent, the waxing crescent moon. And see the planet lower just above the treetops? That's Venus. And those two planets grow closer by the night. And here in the upper right, oh, Mary, I hate to do this to you, but for this, we can just move it up into the middle or anywhere. Yeah, whatever. Okay, good, good. So here in the lower right, you see who joined me? A deer with big ears. And for this, I knew this deer's schedule. So for this night, I hid in the bushes, waited, and when he came, I waited longer for a car to come along and light his path. And when it did, I called out, "Hi, dear." And he turned his head. I saw those big ears, and click went the shutter. And finally, here we have those two planets under the arched limb. You see that? Jupiter and Venus. And for this, I'm laying in the brambles. And I had help painting the branches with my little red flashlight. So that's the night sky. And now this is about a confession, yeah, but this is a confession made to me by a convicted criminal. And you remember last year, I mentioned that I worked a night shift of a crisis hotline. We took calls coming in from a feed from the National Suicide Hotline, and we took local callers, such as the fellow who asked me, "Can you tell me where I can get parts to build a spaceship?" And I really wanted to help him, but in crisis work, we are trained to follow the challenge to the source. So instead, I asked him, "Can you tell me what it is that makes you so much want to leave the planet?" And there were other local callers, including Daryl. The year is 1991. The hour is moving toward midnight. I'm working the night shift in a small basement office in a large institutional building. There's 2 desks and a window up near the ceiling, and I'm the only one there because it's the night shift, and I was fresh on the job. I had plenty of training, but only just started answering calls. So the call comes in. I say, "Hello, this is Contact Caroline. May I help you?" A man snarls, "Yeah, it's Daryl." And then silence until I ask, "Well, how are you, Daryl?" And he says, "I just beat up a woman." And now I'm the silent one until I ask, "Well, how are you after all that?" He says, "It relaxed me." And then, and then he started on a tirade of anger, hollering at me. He says, "Don't you hang up on me. If you hang up, I will come down there and I'll slam you against a wall." Well, I'm not entirely concerned because our little crisis office is located in, as they say, an undisclosed location in Philadelphia. But then Daryl proceeds to tell me exactly where we're located and how he'll get in. So I find out later that all the crisis workers, they all hang up on this guy because we are told if a caller makes us uncomfortable to end the call. And I'm feeling uncomfortable. But I figure that Daryl needs conversation more than I need comfort. So instead, I turn the tables on him and make the same demand. I say, "Daryl, do not hang up this phone. I've redirected the calls, and we have all the time we need." He snarls, "What do you want to talk about?" I say, "Well, you seem like you have a lot of energy. What else do you do with this energy?" He says, "I read." I say, "What do you read?" He says, "I read the dictionary." I say, "What are your favorite words?" He says, "Ubiquitous, omnipresent," and a stream of multisyllable words that he was darn proud to utter. I say, "That sounds worthy to me." So we talk about words for a while. Then I ask, "What else do you do?" And then with the most caring voice, he says, I take care of my mama. I'm all she's got. And on he went about his mom. And I never met her. Of course, I never met Daryl's mom, but I imagined her like this, pensive, concerned about her son. And especially after Daryl told me that he's been to jail for assault. And while there, prison guards, during Daryl's fits of anger, they would slam him on the floor and they would jab needles in his arms. And he told me he's out of prison now, and if he can stay out for 11 years, he'll have his record expunged. Well, I never heard of that, but the goal sounds worthy. So, okay, let it be. The conversation, Daryl and I talked for almost 2 hours, and at one point, I asked him, are you concerned at all about landing back in jail with your beating people up? And he said, as he had mentioned at the beginning of the call, right? So he said, I didn't really beat up a woman. I say, well, why did you tell me you did? He says, because he has bad anger, and when he wants to hurt someone, if he says he does something really bad, it keeps him from doing it. He says he learned this in therapy. Well, I never heard of that kind of therapy, but again, oh well. And thus were Daryl's 2 confessions. First, that he beat up a woman, and then that he didn't really do so. He only said that he did. And that sounds like progress to me. So time passed, months and then years. Daryl and I spoke on the phone on the crisis line about once a month, sometimes more often. And every time he called and I heard his voice, I was so happy because I knew that meant that he had spent another month out of prison. The other crisis workers continued to hang up on Daryl, and my failure was that I never convinced them to stay on the line. I mean, after all, Daryl only called when he was angry and he had a rough exterior, but all this man wanted to do was read the dictionary and take care of his mom. So I think about him a lot, wonder how he is, his mom, hoping he stayed out of prison. And the next interlude, okay, so we've done the sun, the sea, the sky. So this one is about hearts. And in this interlude, there's 2 photos that I did not take. And this is one of them, because this was taken by Adele Graham shortly after her husband Bob had died. This is when she lived on the 4th floor in Building 1. And she told me she looked out her window there and she found in the upper canopy this empty heart space. Do you see it? She said this is where her husband's love resides. And then when she sent me the email with this picture, she said, here is the heart tucked in the top of my tree. It is the place where our hearts join every day. So this moved me, and it sent me on a quest to find heart shapes in nature. And I'll admit most of them are leaves, but oh well, such as here, a leaf on the heart-shaped leaf on the boardwalk, just resting there. And here, another heart shape. I don't really know what to say about this, except it seems to have to be its own life form with those growing colonies of who knows what. And here, lily pads clustered in a heart shape with a point looking toward the lower right, and koi fish swimming around, although I like to think of these as fish flying through the trees. And here, another heart-shaped leaf. Does this one look like it's flying? I mean, when I saw this leaf, on the sidewalk beside the second pondside terrace. It reminded me of a soaring bird. So I ran upstairs, found a little glass, I put it underneath to elevate the leaf and to make it look like it was zooming along the sidewalk. Yeah, I hope it worked. And here, a leaf just floating through the cosmos, right? Um, you see the stars and the galaxies and the star clusters. Really, though, what is this? Where is this? Any ideas? This leaf fell upon the dome-shaped lid of one of those trash cans on the boardwalk across from the Commons. Yeah, and you see those stripes in the upper right edge of the sphere. Those are reflections of the white fence, and the galaxies are reflections of sunbeams coming through the upper canopy. Yeah, and speaking of the cosmos, finally, here is the real cosmos. This is the second photo that I did not take. That's because this is the Heart Nebula, which resides in the constellation Cassiopeia, another heart shape in nature, this one on high. All these hearts to acknowledge Adele's love for her husband. So this is the last one, the last episode. And the confession is that I thought people were inherently one way or another, and they never changed. Of course, I was wrong. This is about someone who, when you peeled away the layers, a whole other person emerged. And one of those layers was the ego. This is my sister. It's okay, Mary. It's all right. That's my sister, Martha. You'll see her again. And she married Clancy. And together, well, they met on the ski slopes, and they're both adventurers, and they're both vegetarians, except Clancy, he makes one exception. The only meat he eats are the agave worms at the bottom of tequila bottles. Yeah, I know. And here's a better view. You can see the worm just laying there at the bottom, ready for Clancy. So technically, they're not worms, as Jane would know, or Jane Brockman's here. They are insect larvae. And I asked Clancy, why do you eat these agave worms? His voice dropped a little bit, and he said, for virility. So Martha and Clancy grew their own food. Here, Clancy tills the garden by hand in his bare feet. And I guess this is a good place to mention that, as amazing as their projects have been, and you'll see some, they really never did things together. He had his project, she had hers. They were on different wavelengths, and sometimes the relationship was a little rocky. So one of Clancy's projects was he made a room in the basement, turned it into a bar, called it the Millwheel Inn. Sarah and I, my daughter, we painted the sign, and Clancy hung the sign at the entrance to the bar. And that's little Max, such a good old dog. And here, for this bar, Clancy, he made his own chocolate stout, spruce beer, and Applejack. For the Applejack, he harvested apples from wild trees in the surrounding hills. Then he pressed the apples into cider, fermented it, and then froze it. Then he drew out the ice, leaving a thicker liquid behind, thus jacking up the alcohol content, thus the name Applejack. So yeah, he poured the results into small oak casks with wooden spigots, and he'd serve up his concoctions to friends and family. So this is later, right? Later in his years. Clancy rode a horse. He was a good old horse. And he handmade a saddle. And he had help from the Amish people. And he made this leather pack. And you see, he decorates his hat with feathers, another one with a rattlesnake band. So Martha and Clancy heated their house with wood. 2 wood stoves, a great big one in the basement, and this one. And I know this stove very well because before Martha and Clancy moved in, I lived in this house, and that was my heat and my cooking, everything. Then Martha and Clancy moved in, and they modernized the place. They took away the walls and exposed this brick. They put in electricity, ooh la la, and a phone line, none of which I'd had. So Martha and Clancy, every year, they ordered wood, and they used a lot of wood. This whole truckload is theirs. They'd unload it, they cut it into chunks, and out in the backyard, Clancy and a couple buddies split the chunks into firewood that you see building up there on the left. Okay, so now about the change. All right, the year is 2007. The first sign that Clancy was changing came in the spring. My sister had just planted her garden full of flowers. There she is, my amazing sister. And she went away for a couple days, and Clancy called her and told her he missed her. Well, this was so not the norm. You know, they had been distant. Those kinds of comments were not passed. So Martha wondered of this phone call, of this uncommon expression of caring. And then a couple weeks later, he woke Martha in the middle of the night and told her to call Oprah because he had things to say. And then a few days later, he walked out into the backyard, the same backyard that he had split the wood, and he couldn't find his way back to the house, which was right behind him, 20 yards away. He was lost. So this happened a couple times. So Clancy figured the Applejack was messing with his mind. So he emptied all the casks, emptied all the spruce beer and chocolate stout, every last bottle in the mill wheel, and just poured it out into the spring grass. And then he lit a fire and he burned the casks. So a couple months went by of dietary changes and tons of medical tests until finally in the summer, doctors concluded that Clancy had Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, CJD. We had never heard of it. It's extremely rare. Maybe 1 or 2 people in a million experience this diagnosis. And here at Okamic, last year, we lost a neighbor to CJD, Madeline Fisher's husband, the big, tall, fabulous Jim Fisher. So it turns out my sister's husband, Clancy, and my friend Jim Fisher are those 2 people in a million who experienced this disease. So just one slide on how the CJD happens. CJD changes proteins in the brain called prions. The affected prions fold over and cause other prions to do the same. And depending on where in the brain this happens, it affects people differently. For Clancy, he wandered, unknowing where he was, unable even to get from one room to the next. So as Clancy's capabilities became affected, I left work, I took family leave and drove to Western New York to see how I could help. Clancy was a carpenter by trade. He made this chest and he made things for the house, like this table that he made from slate that he found at a demolished building in Buffalo. Yeah, and you know, as his disease progressed, one of the capabilities that he did not lose was sanding wood. Martha would walk into a room and find Clancy sanding down the furniture. And I found him sanding the frame of this table, and he just looked at me so sweetly, and he said, "Yeah, just touching it up." Well, Clancy enjoyed sanding through to the grain. And then something I never imagined. Clancy lost even more. He lost all concern, all frustration, all negative emotions, just vamoosed. I figured that those folding prions had spared the part of his brain for sanding wood, but had completely wiped out all the parts of the brain that produce fear or worry. Essentially, Clancy had lost his ego, where before it was about solely pretty much about his projects and him. Now it was about other people. After that decades-long rough relationship with my sister, for her, Clancy had only caring. He wrote her love letters on birch bark. And when Martha was at work, I'd walk Clancy around the house, and he'd touch objects like those stones. See that dove above his shoulder? He'd flick that and get it spinning, and he'd see pictures of my sister, and he would swoon. And after dinner, I left those two lovebirds alone while they sat across the table from each other, held hands, and gazed into each other's eyes. And then, when he could no longer speak, I still walked him around. He touched objects, especially walls. Wood grain fascinated him. So during his time of not speaking, Clancy cared for this scrawny stray cat. And for hours with a little pet brush, he would groom that old feline. And then, you know, you could see the love in Clancy's face, and the cat was in heaven. So when Clancy could no longer walk, he lay in his bed with that same look, holding in his palm a curled up photo of his Indian spiritual master. So one morning, we're sitting at the breakfast table. Clancy was in his hospice bed nearby. So sitting there were my sister, her daughter, who had just joined us, and myself. The three of us had been up most of the night for a couple of weeks. And we were sleep deprived and giddy. And we were carrying on here like we had lost our only minds until my sister held up her hand for us to be quiet. She had felt a sense, heard a sound, and she went to Clancy, and he took one last sigh and died in peace. He was surrounded by his creations, his homemade saddle, his leather pack, and his hat with a rattlesnake band, and he was surrounded by people who loved him. Clancy had found his heaven in this life. With no ego, all he had left was kindness. And naturally, his change came not from the disease, or came from the disease, yeah, but not his own volition. Yet, this whole experience opened my mind to people changing. And I mean, think of Daryl, right? When you peeled away his anger and his rough exterior, you know, all he had left was this deep caring for his mom. And it begs the question for me, could it be that at the core of all beings is simply an innate natural goodness? So that's about Clancy. And yeah, so for the final interlude, good timing, that's the last sip of water. So for the final interlude, how about we just bring it all back home with a few photos from around the hammock, such as here, the entrance to the hammock in early morning light. and you walk around. You walk around the bend there and come into the community gardens, right? And you would find Doug Mary's butterfly garden with those plump orange zinnias and a butterfly, and here upon pink, another one. That that orange one, I mean, it appears both bold and subtle at the same time. And here, just a few gardens away, is Susan Bankston's canna lilies. And taken in early morning sunbeams, see those big fat sunbeams, and you can see the progression of the blossoms from upper left, full bloom, lower right. That one's about to keel over. And the pods, these seed pods all around. So this was night. This felt so magical, you know. The moon was nearly full, and the hammock gave an opening for the moonlight to come through. Yeah, and then here, just a few days later, thunder and lightning. Now, do you guys ever like turn off all your lights at night and sit near the window and just watch outside for things to happen, such as this ragged bolt disappearing into the hammock? And here is a shot of gold. Um, okay, how many here live in building 1? Yeah, okay, well, you know then. You have the best views around for nightfall. You look out back at that western view, and it's a playground for sunsets and planets. Yeah, and then here, finally, final picture to acknowledge all sentient beings. Here is Bootsy, a darn lucky cat to have ended up in the care of Anne Margolius. Yeah, and Bootsy led many years of a good life, lots of purrs. So that's around the hammock, and thus, whoop, got to click it again, Mary, I think. Thank you. And now, this concludes the 4 episodes, the 4 confessions, and the changes that they made. And in closing, here's to. We say, here's to Martha and Clancy, he who losing everything was left with only kindness. And to Daryl's caring for his mom, which helped rescue him from violent actions. And to the whole Hawk family for uniting a neighborhood divided by politics. And to the wonder, that's okay, that's a green flash there. To the wonder of nature, such as the awe inspired by this tiny flash of green. And all these are, you know, experiences that helped me change and move forward. So I hope you enjoyed my few brief accounts from this ordinary life. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you to Jane. And we now have time for questions. If you have any, just raise your hands and I will come around to you. But before that, I'd like to have a big ovation for Mary, who stepped in at the very last minute and made this happen.
Yay, Mary.
Yay. And you will see her again.
Mary's got it going on. That's what I say.
Do we have questions for Jane?
Does anybody wonder?
Here's
Go
a
ahead.
question.
What's the next green flash that you'd be looking for?
Oh, in other words, what am I searching for, obsessed with, can't let it go? Oh, yeah. I think it would be really fine This is why I'm eating healthy, because I want to be around when Betelgeuse, remember we had Orion up on the screen? Betelgeuse is the upper left shoulder of Orion. And sometime in the next 50,000 years, it's expected to go nova, which means we will see it for weeks. It will light the night for weeks, just like back in 1054, the Crab Nebula did the same thing. And the Chinese recorded this, how it lit the whole world. So I'm hoping for that soon. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
Oh, thank you. Oh, thanks. She said about the photography. Yeah, somebody asked me if I use Photoshop or AI, and no, I don't even have it on, I don't know even how to use it. It's just like that glass, on the beach. I just bought the glass at a dollar store and that was it. So, yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Questions, comments? Oh, we've got one over here. Alice?
Alice. Yeah.
Thank you for this delightful and thoughtful presentation. And I just want you to know you are always welcome to Building 1 Atrium.
Oh, thank you. I love that view. It's a lot going on out there. Yeah.
Okay, anything else? I will close today then, thanking Jane and Mary again. And we have someone in the audience today who will be our adventurer next week. Roger Curtis, who is sitting right here, will be here. And I understand that his daughter will be here also, which will be fun. So, Roger, we will see you next week. Same time, same station. Thank you very much for being here today.